What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Filsinger Games Character Spotlight with Mike and Brock.
Mike,
I'm Brock, and tonight we're joined by a first-time guest, Mr. Dave Little. How you doing,
I'm
Dave?
Dave. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. We figure we're going to be covering a legend. We should have a real legend in our midst.
What are you saying? I'm old, or is it?
But yeah, we're going to cover Sergeant Slaughter tonight for our legends discussion.
good old Sarge, been around for a long time, wrestled in all three big promotions,
Hmm.
and he was
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I picked Sergeant Slaughter, he was really my first favorite wrestler.
Cool.
Um, I didn't discover wrestling until I was like 19 years old, so I didn't have the childhood history with it. Um, but when I started watching in the summer of '83. It was just pre-Hulkamania. Bob Backlund was still your champion, and Sergeant Slaughter was the number one contender who was in pursuit of Backlund, and he had everything. He had the camouflage limousine that he would drive down to the ring, and he had these great promos where he would call everybody a maggot and a puke, and um, not only that, but I was in college at the time, and there was a dude that I went to college with who kind of reminded me of Sergeant Slaughter because he had that same physique and the same way he kind of walked around. And so, Sergeant Slaughter was just the first guy that I really started, looking forward to seeing. Okay, I want to see what he's going to do.
Very cool.
and my first Sarge memory goes. Now I was hoping because I'm usually the old guy in the group, but
Mm-hmm.
but my Sarge goes back predates Dave by about a year.
Yeah, yeah. You
Uh,
probably got started with wrestling at a younger age.
yeah, I got started when I was 8,
Yeah.
but that was about 1980. Well, a little earlier, but my first
Mm-hmm.
Sarge memory was 1982 when Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernoodle were feuding Steamboat and Youngblood for the NWA World Titles.
Mm-hmm.
That was that was my first introduction to them, and I hated them as a tag team because I'm a young kid, so I'm cheering for Steamboat and Youngblood, and I remember Don Kernoodle. He'd get up and he'd do the test of strength, and then he's the only person I've ever seen do this. He would drop kick people in the test of strength, and I'm like, and I can clearly remember going, "That's an awesome move.
Yeah,
Why doesn't everyone else do that?"
that is awesome.
And he was a little sneaky guy, and then Sarge would come in and polish guys off. He was they had that big man, you know, the sneaky heel and the tough guy heel combo down perfect, and that's what I really remember them. And I finally did see the match. It wasn't until years later on on a videotape of Steamboat and Youngblood beating them in a cage. I can't remember where. I think Greensboro, North Carolina, or something like that. But that match I finally did track down and watch.
My first exposure to Sergeant Slaughter was on G.I. Joe, A Real American
Ah,
Hero.
there you go. Yeah.
And then whenever he came back to WWF at the time after his run on the show, because I guess Vince wouldn't let him do G.I. Joe, so he went back to AWA. And I didn't really watch AWA at the time, so I just knew him as the G.I. Joe character, and I thought that there was a crossover then with WWF, not knowing that he existed as a wrestler before that. So that was my first exposure to Sergeant Slaughter on G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
Yeah, and his matches were fun to watch because he was a great big guy. He was
yeah.
enormous guy, and he could really move. He could do the slaughter cannon. He did that jumping clothesline off of the second turnbuckle, and really, did a lot with his size. And then of course the Cobra Clutch, which was inescapable, finishing hold that nobody could survive. And he had a match with, I think it was Swede Hansen, just a TV match, and Hansen was doing everything he could to try and get out of the Cobra clutch, and Slaughter just kept kneeing him in the gut until he weakened enough that he submitted him with the Cobra clutch, and just yeah, I mean his matches were fun, his promos were fun, his whole persona was a lot of fun, and then he when he finally had his big babyface turn, I remember watching the day that Iron Sheik was in the ring and doing all kinds of nonsense and way overstayed the end of his match, and then Slaughter was on for the next match. And Slaughter comes up to the top of the ring ramp, and Vince McMahon is shouting, "Their paths are going to cross!" And that was the moment where Slaughter laid eyes on the Iron Sheik, and they got into it, and a instantaneous babyface was born.
Yeah, I also think Slaughter's credited with being the first guy to use ring entrance music.
Okay.
He
And
would he would come into that military,
to the Marine, yeah.
yeah, the Marine intro or whatever it is, and yeah, he came into that. So he was credited as, I think, being the first guy to use
Really
ring
interesting.
entrance music.
Hmm.
Um,
Just a random bit of information I remember reading about, and I'm like, I think that could very well possibly be true.
um, Actually got to meet Sergeant Slaughter
That's
at
cool.
one of the Waterloo Hall of Fame induction weekends. I don't know, Mike, were you there the year that Slaughter was there? That might have been the year after that they held Galacticon at.
I can't remember who they were inducting the year I went,
Um, well,
because I didn't go to the dinner.
the year that I met Slaughter was the year that they were inducting Don Kernoodle.
Oh, okay, then no, I wouldn't
Okay.
have been there then.
And it was just a couple of months after Don Kernoodle had died by suicide,
Yeah.
just earlier that year. And Don's brother Rocky was there, and it was a very emotional scene because a lot of people were mourning, that they'd lost Don, and Rocky was there, and he was really, um, quite emotional the whole time. But Sergeant Slaughter really kind of just took control of the whole dinner and the whole presentation and everything, and really just kind of he was the guy that held everybody else together. I mean, he and Kernoodle were close because they were
Yeah.
tag partners, and they had quite a history together. But Sarge was the one who really gave a very moving speech that nobody else could give because people were so broken up over it. And not only that, but he turned out to be a an unbelievably good storyteller. You see these guys on TV, and they've got these real gruff personas, and you have no idea what personality lies beneath that. When Sarge got up on the platform and started giving his speech and telling his jokes and everything, he was a very, very entertaining guy.
Yeah, I remember um Sarge getting into a feud over the Canadian title, the NWA Canadian Championship, with Angela Mosca.
Hmm. That'd be a
And
good Legends match.
it was funny because I'd see the matches, and then Tim Delton, when he came up to a Galactican one year, he was talking about it, and we were talking to Smith Hart about stuff like that, and about how because um let's see how to put it. I guess it was like a best out of three series, and so they were each, gonna go back and forth and accumulate in a cage match. But Tim was telling me the the match in Toronto where Slaughter won. He's got Slaughter's got um Mosca's got a sleeper hold because he used a sleeper hold as a finisher sometimes,
Yep.
and he's got it on Slaughter, but Mosca's got it on the outside of the ring, and the referee's counting, and he's slowly dragging Mosca in the ring, but because Mosca's now draped over the top rope, but his feet are outside, so they're still counting him because his feet are outside, and he gets counted out.
Oh,
And Tim was telling me he was so pissed at that ending. I thought it was such a cool ending, but I was a lot younger too. I was like, I couldn't believe that. And Tim watched it, and he was so mad that he didn't even want to see the third match of the series because it upset him so much. And I remember talking to Angelo about it. He goes, "Yeah," he goes that he loved working the Sarge because they could really play up the country
yeah, yeah.
aspect of it. So that's why they ended up having to feud over that Canadian championship.
So would you have been rooting for Mosca then, or
Yeah,
loyal
I
to
was
your
rooting for
countrymen?
Mosca. Yeah, I was rooting for Mosca because he was from Canada and he was the good guy up here.
Canadian guy. Oh, okay, yeah.
And back then I only rooted for the good. I'm 8, 9 years old. I only rooted for the good guys. I couldn't tell you the first bad guy I rooted for.
Oh,
It probably might have been the Road Warriors.
no, I was always attracted to the bad guys just
Me too.
because they were so much more fun to watch.
Hmm.
Um, and Sergeant Slaughter was the first real heel that I attached myself to, and then of course, that was summer of '83, and then January of '84, Hulkamania takes hold,
Yeah.
and I was never a fan of Hulk Hogan and that whole charade. And it was very easy to start rooting for the heels and the Paul Orndorffs and the Bobby Heenans of the world and King Kong Bundy and all the great heels that came along and Hulkamania was so boring because you always knew how every match was going to end.
Yeah.
With Hulk hyperventilating and shaking his fists and the guy mindlessly punching away at him for 3 or 4 hits and then you know the finger point and 3 punches and a whip to the rope and a leg drop and that was that. But yeah. So I think just those experiences really drew me over to I guess the dark side of my wrestling fanhood at a very early stage in my fandom.
Yeah, I missed, uh, and I really can't remember too much of Sarge's WWF stint when he was shooting Backlund because I honestly don't remember it. And then the next thing I remember, he was in the AWA feuding Boris Zukov, which was
Hmm.
probably one of the worst feuds I've
Yeah,
ever seen in my life. But that was Vern, and he tried to play up the America
the
versus
Russian
Russia
thing. Yeah,
aspect, but he didn't have a big bad Russian. He had Boris Zukov.
and
So
big head.
yeah, so it really didn't fit too well. And I think he might
Yeah.
have might have gotten into a little feud with Colonel De Beers as well, who actually just passed away not too long ago this week.
Yeah, I saw that.
So it's
So what
it
about you, Brock? You said you like the heels.
Yes.
Who are your favorite heels?
Uh, when I was a kid growing up in Pittsburgh, Lord Zoltan was my favorite heel. I would turn crowds in his favor a lot because I'm loud. Well, this guy's cheering for this guy. Maybe we're supposed to.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was probably my favorite all-time heel, just because the local connection of the shows he would always do there. I'm a Ric Flair guy.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah, me too.
yeah, that's probably my top heel. Piper, you know, the classic heels.
Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, yeah. I loved when he kicked the basketball away from the kid
Yeah,
at the.
yeah.
Oh, you didn't get five.
and one of those kids was RVD.
Yeah, he was the one who kissed his boot.
Yeah, yeah. I think the first singles bad guy I cheered for was Adrian Street. I
Okay.
just and it was because of his, because he was feuding Jimmy Valiant, and I just hate him so much. But I liked him because he was a good wrestler,
Hmm.
and you could see he was smaller, and I was smaller back then. I'm like anybody could be a wrestler. If this guy can be a wrestler, and I didn't understand it all, and then that was the first heel turn I remember watching was Adrian Street saving Jimmy Valiant from the assassins. Just blew my mind. My first big heel turn.
Yeah, that was back in the days before the cool heels.
Yeah.
Now we've got the cool heels that
Yeah.
you root for, but you they do bad things, but you still root for them. Because back in those days when a heel came along and they were really dynamic and really got the crowd going, they would just turn a babyface.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
first one I remember was Randy Savage.
Yeah.
They brought him in as a heel, and he's flying off the top turnbuckle onto the floor, doing double axe handles and doing all this daredevil stuff, and the people are just you know can't believe what they see. But instead of him being the cool heel, they turned him babyface and they paired him with Hulk Hogan, and they
That
uh,
took a long time for him to do. That was over a year he was a bad guy.
mhm.
And it was with him, it was odd because everybody loved Miss Elizabeth. And that's how he got
Yeah.
over because he treated her like crap. So it made
Hmm.
him even a bigger heel because, Miss Elizabeth would open the ropes, sit down, shut up.
Heel
And
So
Savage was great.
how do you use the Sarge in your Legends Fed?
yeah. So he it's interesting he asked. I Several years before his official card came out, there was an Olsen Brothers bootleg
Those
that
Olsen
I
brothers.
from the AWA set. Um, and I started using that like right away. And it was actually a little stronger than his Legends card because the bootleg card had the Slaughter Cannon was an add one, which I always liked because that move was my favorite move that he did, and it tended to be a game changer. So I liked that, and so I brought him into my Northeast Fed, or no, into my Northeast Fed, and he became North American Heavyweight Champion. And he held that belt forever and a day with the previous card, and I decided that I was going to continue to use the AWA version that the Olsen brothers had created until he lost the title. Even after the Hall of Fame set came out. So then he lost the title, and I started using the Hall of Fame card, and he didn't achieve quite the dominance that he'd achieved previously, but still very solid um, babyface character. His Northeast contract ran out, and he has just gone down to my Texas territory, um, where my good guy faction was kind of, um, my good guy faction down there had been decimated by injuries. Nikita Koloff went out, Kevin Steen went out, and Sarge kind of rode in on his white horse and took up the charge for the babyface fed down in my Texas territory, and so yeah, he's having another good run down there.
So you use him primarily as a face?
Yeah,
Any
just be,
chance of him being a heel, or are you just going to keep him as the
um,
white meat baby
I'll probably
face?
just keep him as a baby face because I have a I have a very hard time booking good baby faces in my Fed. Um, because heels are so much easier to book. You put them together, they do bad things,
Hmm.
they beat people up, and it's been hard for me to consistently keep the balance of finding good baby faces to battle the heels. So for the foreseeable future, I've got enough heels, and um, I'm going to keep Sarge on the baby face side.
How many Legends Feds do you run?
Um, I run it's one Fed,
Oh, okay.
but it has four territories. One territory is women, so they have their own titles and their own stuff, and then I have a Northeast and a Midwest and or my Middle America is Tennessee, Texas, and then I have a Southeast, Georgia, Florida. Um, and then the three feds have their own titles and their own feuds and their own matches and everything. And then I have a world champion and a world tag team champion that are the best of the three. And then each time a new cycle, I see, okay, well, who are the top contenders? And maybe, you know, maybe the Northeast champion has to fight the Southeast champion to see who gets the next world title shot.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I've watched your Heartland Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, yeah. The Heartland is the whole universe.
Yeah, I'll pop in every so often.
Yeah,
I'll get a notification that you're about to come on because you'll post it. And so
yeah,
if I'm free, I'm like, okay, I'll pop in because it's usually only about 45 minutes long. I think half hour, 45 minutes somewhere in there.
yeah. Usually runs 45 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I try to do 3 or 4 feature matches, and then for my monthly pay-per-view, I do the whole show, and that's about 2 hours. So once a month it'll be a longer show, but most Saturdays it's 45 minutes, give or take.
Link is below if you guys want to check that out.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, we linked to your
oh,
show.
lovely, awesome, thanks.
No problem. And that's Saturdays that
Yeah, typically it's Saturday around 7:30, 8 o'clock Central Time.
okay.
Um, there's another guy who does a really, really good baseball broadcast early evenings, so I kind of watch his game and then jump on after he's finished.
There you
So,
go. Right on.
because I enjoy watching the game, and I'm never going to compete with him for audience share. So if I go against him, I'm going to be lonely.
I know all
I've
about
been
having a lonely audience.
I've been impressed. I think one time I was on, there was 12 people watching you play wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and that's what I do it for. I don't monetize. I don't try to draw a big audience. It's just I enjoy doing it, and I want to promote the game.
Hmm.
I got started streaming a few years back when I was watching another guy stream, and he said, "Hey, you need to start doing this." Guy by the name of Al, Red Sox fan, who does baseball and boxing and football and stuff. And I started coming to Al's broadcast. And he says, "You got to start doing this." And so well, okay, I'll do wrestling because it's my favorite thing and it's the game I know best, and I'd like to promote the Filsinger community. And I think some people have kind of adopted Filsinger who saw those broadcasts as part of the larger sports game community on YouTube, and so it's been a lot of fun.
Nice.
Now, how did you get into the game, into Filsinger Games?
Yeah, good question. I was at a game convention in Columbus, Ohio back in about 2005, and that's where I met Tom. Um, and he had, I think the first year he had Buff Bagwell with him.
Oh,
And then the second time I saw him at Origins, he had Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And maybe I have my years reversed. Maybe it was Duggan first and Bagwell the following year. Um, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan was awesome. He was playing games, and my three kids were with me, and they all played Filsinger against Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he was hooting and hollering, and even in a crowd of this huge convention hall with thousands of people there, whenever he went "Hello," everybody in the place could hear him. And even the ones that, even if they weren't hardcore wrestling fans, you'd hear a number of people just respond "Hello," and he had the "Heyo" chant going all over this big convention full of Dungeons and Dragons players and everything else. And so that's how I think the first year I bought the game, and then the second year I actually started a Fed, and somewhere in there discovered the rest of the Filsinger Games community, and that's what really drew me to become a dedicated Filsinger Games player, because I've played other games online, computer, tabletop, what have you, but when I got to the Filsinger Games community, that's when Legends really took hold as my is my favorite game, and you guys will be interested to know this. I wandered into Galacticon for the very first time, 2006, 2007, thereabouts, and the first guy that introduced himself to me was Jeff Manning.
Huh.
Who's that?
And yeah, I mean, Jeff and I just immediately hit it off, and we lived, 45 minutes apart, and we figured out, that we were that close by, and Jeff was the first guy that really just kind of welcomed me into the community, and Tim Dalton, another easy guy to get to know, talked with Tim a lot. Um, and just guys like that, getting to meet and talk to people that like wrestling, like board games, not people that you meet in your everyday life all the time. So it was just a great fit.
I remember because you used to call yourself Dayton Dave,
Yeah, yeah,
and I screwed it up the one time, and I wrote it down as Daytona Dave.
Daytona Dave. Yeah, yeah. That's when I was living in Dayton, Ohio, and I lived there until 2010. And in 2010, I moved up to Wisconsin and took a job at a place called Epic. And so I had to drop the Dayton Dave, and so now I'm Epic Dave.
Which is a much better name, actually.
Yeah, it's a better name, and I can do stuff with it. Like my channel is the Epic Sports Broadcasting Network. So
Very cool.
sounds great. Yeah.
So one of the things we do is we're like, okay, you have Sergeant Slaughter. Now, how would you use him in a GWF game?
Oh gosh, I've not played a whole lot of GWF.
Yeah.
Over the years. I did play about a year and a half worth when the New Beginning set came out, because that was kind of a good time to get my feet wet, and I enjoyed it, but really I'm such a fan of the real game
Yeah.
experience that I just didn't have the headspace for a separate fictional fed, and just in all of my sports gaming stuff, fictional feds are not my jam. If I'm going to play baseball, I'm going to play with real teams. If I'm going to play wrestling, I'm going to play with the real guys. What have you? But if I were using, but the first guy that comes to mind from that experience was the American guy.
Commander Sam?
Um,
No,
no, there was a
American
guy
guy.
actually
Yeah,
called
there's
Yes,
American
American
guy.
American guy. Yeah.
Um,
He's from
and
Ohio too.
yeah, he's from Kettering, which is right, which is a suburb of Dayton. So yeah, that would be where I would see Sarge fitting in as part of a patriotic, American guy, Sergeant Slaughter, almost the GI Joe motif that he played in his professional wrestling career.
I think I'd have him come in when Commander Sam turned bad and have him be like bad Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, okay, so he'd be
He'd be a heel, but with Commander Sam because Commander Sam was a heel manager for a little bit.
hmm,
And
that'd be a good fit.
I think that's how I'd use him.
I'd have him fight all the alien threats.
He's a guy you really can't. He's one of these guys. He could actually fit really well into a
Oh
game.
yeah, you wouldn't have to change his
Yeah,
name or
I bet he
anything.
would. Yeah.
It could easily be done. He's one of the
Hmm.
guys where you can do it with.
Oh yeah.
That because that's we've talked about this before, Dave. Where you have a lot of people who the Legends people stick with Legends, the GWF guys stick with GWF, and there's only a very small few
hmm
that will, cross streams and play everything.
Cronus is the way to do it.
Yeah, where you can just play whatever you want.
Yeah. But I was always fascinated, the years I would go to Galacticon and just watching the reactions of the guys when the new GWF set for the year would come out, and they would just, rip those books open and just start, reading the stories, and it's like the story was more interesting to them than the cards were. They're, oh, we'll put the cards over here. Let's read the book.
Uh-huh,
You,
uh-huh.
you know, and I just thought that was very compelling and fun to watch. And I think there's a lot of crossover with comic book
Yep.
For
um,
sure.
people, and I was never a comic book guy, so that's probably part of why I connected better with the Legends of Wrestling than the Champions of the Galaxy. But yeah, it was always just so fun to watch when the books would go out and people would just couldn't wait to dive in.
Yeah, that's the one thing neat with the game. Like I've been around since almost the beginning, and I've got the cards still somewhere where Tom originally had made like a Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, a Don Morocco, a
Hmm.
Tito Santana. I have all these cards still that Tom made
Yeah.
because he tried to sell it to WWF, and they said no, it's not going to get anywhere. It'll fail.
Yeah,
And
I think he said they were talking to him and then they decided to go with
a board game.
WWF Raw Deal,
Yeah.
the collectible card game, which, I don't know if that's still a thing or not,
I
but
don't believe so. I think it had a pretty short
certainly
run.
having plenty of fun with Filsinger since 2006. My Fed has been running, so
Very cool.
Yeah, like I used to do a Legends Fed well before Legends, and a lot of guys did this. We made our own bootlegs.
mhm.
Like everybody had, and I did it, and I ran it for a little bit, and I ended up, not like, I stopped it and I just went to my GWF. But
Mhm.
I've always liked the Legend stuff, and then when I got it up and running with Tom and started introducing him to all the Legends, then I'm like, wow, this is, you know, this could take off. And we talked about it, and then Tom just started steamrolling, and everybody was hopping in on it, and it's helped the game
Yeah,
grow.
Oh,
and
for sure.
and and you yourself were a character in the game,
Not the Legends.
but no, in the Champions.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I've not heard that story.
Um, when I broke into wrestling, I used to invite Tom up to my shows because they'd only be about 2.5 hours from him.
Hmm, yeah,
So
true.
he would drive up, get a hotel, do the shows, and I'd always make sure he had a table so he could sell the game. And he'd usually sell enough games to basically pay for his room
Yeah,
and
break even.
yeah, but he was getting it out there, and that this is going back 20 plus years, 20 almost 25 years. So yeah, he was he'd do that to help market his game. And then he always told me Johnny Powers was his all-time favorite wrestler. Oh no, sorry, Johnny Valentine.
Okay.
And Tim's is Johnny Powers. I got him mixed up there. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be on the show with Greg Valentine. And he was like, oh, okay. And prior to that, I was on a show with King Kong Bundy. And on some of the shows, you really don't talk to the talent. You didn't want to mark out. So I'm a couple seats over, and I'm talking to Colin Brackenridge, another wrestler, and we're talking about we both played in a Pursue the Pennant baseball league. And Bundy heard us, and he's like, "Hey, come here." And he come over, and he goes, "What's this Pursue the Pennant game?" And so we told him, and he goes, "Anything like Stratomatic baseball?" He goes, "Because I love Stratomatic baseball."
Yeah.
He goes, I don't like to go bar hopping with the guys and all that. He goes, "I like to save my money." And he goes, "So I got," and he, in his suitcase there, he had a box full of Stratomatic baseball teams, and he just run a season.
Sweet.
And he goes, "I do this every night." He goes, "You play any other card games?" And I'm like, "Actually." And so he ended up. I got him and Tom to switch information, and Tom traded him a couple game sets for some signed merchandise. And then like 2 months later, we met Val. I introduced him to Greg Valentine, and he signed Valentine that night. And then he's like, "I'm going to put you, Bundy, and Valentine in the game." And that was in Brantford. He had decided to do that. So Brantford's actually the home of where legends all came together. Brantford, Ontario, where Tom decided, yeah, I'm gonna put all you guys into the game.
But you went in as champions.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
yeah,
all
because
you're
there
three of
was no
them.
yeah,
legends branch back
right.
then.
Some time travel shenanigans to get
Yeah,
everybody there.
yeah. And then as Tom was going to some of these comic book conventions, they'd always have wrestlers there. And then Tom started talking to them, and it slowly grew that way. And then other fans started signing guys in. So it was all pretty good, but we should be heading out soon.
Yeah, just look, we're down to a minute and a half of
Yeah.
recording time. This was fun. I mean, I
Yeah.
could go another hour, but yeah, thanks so much for the invite and for having me on.
We're happy to have you. We'll definitely bring you back next time we want to talk about a legend of your choice. You're a good guest, so we appreciate having you
Appreciate
here.
that.
If you haven't done so yet, click that subscribe button right below Dave. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And while you're here, scroll on down to the description. You'll find all of our friends who make Filsinger Games related content, including the official Filsinger Games podcast roll up, Dizzy Dice from Lee Longpree, the Legends team's Uncharted Territory, Grant Pachoko's solo promoter. Grant's also here on YouTube with Dave, who you can find his Heartland Championship Wrestling link below. You'll find Bucky749. He does Filsinger Games related content, as well as Brad Plays 81. I'm on Twitch. I don't want to tell you what days because lately I haven't been on much. So just watch out for that. Yeah, so thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Night, everyone.